We're here to launch an awareness campaign aimed at highlighting the cost of organized retail crime, not just for Calgary, but for the whole province. We're represented here by the different agencies because this is a problem that's right across the province, and we're trying to address it as a team. So organized retail crime is essentially offenders that are organized and are specific about the targets that they're trying to get. So the target could be a specific item or a specific product that they're looking to get, and then actually basically turn into a monetary return. So, sorry. Ultimately, basically it's for monetary gain. The goods are usually taken systematically and it's calculated. So there'll be often more than one person, or they work as a team. It's different than shoplifting, and it's definitely different than robbery. So organized retail crime is theft, but with an organized component and a goal, and it's targeting, like I said, those very specific items that they know they can get a return for. So it's a growing problem in Calgary, Alberta, and Canada as a whole. And in Canada, we're seeing approximately $4.5 billion in this industry, this criminal industry, right across the province. And retailers are getting hit all the time. What's interesting, though, is most people don't even recognize that organized retail crime exists. So I'd like to bring, I'd like to bring your attention to some of the more specific losses that some of the retailers are talking about. And I'm not going to talk specifically about retailers or specific companies, but I can talk about the fact that designer fashion, high-end fragrances are a really high target. Cosmetic, makeup, athletic wear, everything down to books, stolen meat and grocery items, and liquor. Alcohol is a big target as well. So one of the major consequences of organized retail crime is the prices for our customers. The customers' prices seem to continue to go up because they have to cover the cost of loss prevention and the cost of the loss. So not only are retailers trying to stop loss, but they still got to recover some of those other profit losses. And that's a consequence for all of us. So another major cost that sometimes we don't correlate is that organized retail crime, even though they're looking to make money for themselves, it's often for other illicit behaviors, whether it's drugs or other types of criminal offenses that we see these people doing, weapons offenses and that sort of stuff. We know that traditionally the items are stolen. They're either sold online or they can be sold internationally. We've even seen as far as pre-ordered items with a shopping list and going and getting those items. So they already have buyers before they've actually committed the theft. So the message we're really hoping to get out here is that Albertans specifically, and Calgarians, we can help prevent organized retail crime by recognizing the crime itself and refusing to buy items that we believe to be stolen items. If the deal's too good to be true, if you're purchasing something that's brand new in the box and it's, you know, a fraction of the price of the original item, those are some of the things to highlight with respect to this might be a stolen item. We can also avoid purchasing the stolen items by being aware of what the market value is for that, the actual market value. Asking sellers how they obtained the property. Where'd you get it from? Why do you have so many? And why are they all brand new in the box? And really just keeping a sharp mind to the fact that this exists and you may be buying stolen property and inadvertently you're contributing to other criminal elements. You could be risking losing the item yourself. You don't know who you're actually buying, especially when you're buying online. You don't know who you're buying from. If these people were willing to commit a crime to get the item, what's to stop them from committing a crime further when you go to get it? I've seen in my experience where actually somebody would go and buy a specific tool or an item that was fairly high value, when the individual would exchange the item with the seller, the purchaser would exchange with the seller the money. The seller would actually watch you put it in your car, go back into the store to get whatever other parts were missing from the device, and then steal it back from your car. So now they got your money and the stolen item. So these aren't uncommon behaviors. So if you do recognize suspicious activity or you think that there's some stolen goods, we just ask you to contact one of the police agencies specific to the city or the municipality district you're in. If it's Calgary, non-emergency lines 403-266-1234, or you can reach out to Crime Stoppers anonymously, and that should be directed to whatever municipal agency or provincial agency needs to address it. Are there questions?
Just in terms of like the organized crime aspect of it, are you seeing connections between cases in Calgary that thieves may have gone to Lethbridge and targeted the same store, or Edmonton and targeted the same store? Is that something you're also seeing?
That's extremely common, actually, and maybe I can pass it over to my counterpart from Edmonton, and Ray.
Yes, that's actually a great question, because essentially what we're seeing is that the same prolific offenders are going up and down the highway. And because we have relationships with the major retailers, we're getting the information that it's the same offenders that are hitting Edmonton, going down to Calgary, Airdrie, Lethbridge. And so when we solicit that information from the retailers, and they're giving us when they're reporting these crimes, we're able to act on it, and maybe actually share that information with the retailers to be aware of what's being stolen and what's being done with the property, and so maybe they can do some things to alleviate or prevent some of these thefts by changing some of their practices or making their store employees aware of some of these prolific offenders.
And this is not, something where someone's just stealing something once in a while. This is like you're seeing.
We're seeing the same offenders, and like I said, the colleagues here, we share the information, and we're seeing the same people stealing. Like electronics right now is a very prevalent thing that's being stolen. And we're seeing the offenders that are in Edmonton coming down the QE2 and stealing in Calgary. And so there's obviously a lucrative market underground for these items. So what we want is to send that message that you have to be more proactive and report this information to the police immediately so we can act on it and deal with these offenders, because, like I said, it's the same offenders, and if we can hold them accountable, then we can hopefully put a little bit of a dent in some of these crimes.
What would you say is the big motivator behind this? I mean, why is we seeing a spike in numbers? Is this a crime of opportunity? People thinking they can get away with this? I mean, I know we've had a drug issue. Is this just, why are we seeing so much of a problem of it now?
It hasn't actually been any. It's just more prevalent now, I think, because it's a lot of it has to do with the online component. A lot of this stuff is being shared. The underground world uses the social media a lot, and what we're finding is that there's a huge underground market through online fencing and things like that. So, like Constable Anderson said, we've actually got shopping lists of what is going to be moved in the underground market. So whatever they're targeting and what they're stealing, it's out there now. And when they find what's the flavor of the month, they're going to target it, and because they can move it for a profit.
Who are these buyers? Are there actual tangible underground markets that people are shopping in? Are they selling it out of the back of their truck online? Who's purchasing this?
Do you want to hit that, Joe?
I guess I'm being tapped on the shoulder for that. That is one of the questions we would like the answer to. So through our investigations with the online purchasing, we don't necessarily get to that major supplier, the person putting the orders. One of the projects at the RCMP project with Calgary Police back in the spring looked at a group that was using counterfeit currency to make purchases. And those purchases were for specific items that were requested for an overseas person. Now, of course, you're looking at a property offense, very small in nature, dealing with national implications, it makes it a little bit hard to conduct a timely investigation. And a lot of times the people have moved on to other crimes by then. The one thing that's like the key message here today is that we want buyers to be proactive about where they're buying their property from. So the items that are being purchased and sold through online, that simple question of where did you get it from, a legitimate seller is going to tell you where they got it from. There are lots of companies that go bankrupt and their items are sold and purchased by auctioneers. So there is legitimate purchases, but that simple question of where did you get it from is very key to keeping the numbers down. The previous question about why is there a spike, we're heading into the holiday season. Everybody's looking for a deal. So when these organized crime groups start identifying what products are of interest, those get stolen. So, that's why we want to be proactive on it. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm going to add one thing about the spike aspect too. I think what we're seeing too is the collaboration now. Even the police have always worked together. We as a group now throughout the province are actually collaborating a lot more now and having meetings and so we're actually seeing the common names and the common occurrences happening back and forth. So we're actually broadcasting that out now. So that's where the spike may be coming from also, is we're more aware now provincially on what's happening.
You all represent the province's 3 or 4 largest police services. In terms of Alberta, because you guys are spread out across the province, how do we fare compared to other parts of the country? Are we having a problem specifically, or is this more systemic across the country?
It's happening across the country for sure. I don't know where personally. I don't know if anyone else here knows.
I think that, sorry, to answer the question, I don't really know outside of the entire Alberta. What I can say though is that the retailers that we work with are regional and sometimes national, and they're seeing anecdotally and information that we're getting from the retailers is this isn't just an Alberta problem, it's across the country. In conversation with the Retail Council of Canada, they've even identified that this isn't just isolated, this isn't just an Alberta issue, this is province-wide. What we can say that we're doing well is that we're working together. And there's other agencies in other provinces that have come to actually tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, you guys are doing a great job, how do we do what you're doing? And we're making headway. We're breaking sort of into an area that really wasn't communicated before. And I think that kind of covers why we're seeing a little bit more influence in Alberta, but we're also seeing how we're going to do a better job as law enforcement.
Is that the message to potential offenders in this province? You guys are seeing patterns, you're familiar with names, and you're into this? I
think the message that really should be to the potential offenders is that we're working together, and we recognize that offenders aren't bound by borders, and we're going to have to make sure we're not bound by borders, and that we work and communicate and use current tools and up-to-date tools to actually be effective in that communication, and recognizing who those real offenders are and start figuring out better ways to address that issue.
I know you didn't want to reveal certain companies, but is that the target, is these sort of big chain corporate stores? I mean, we're not talking about people who are targeting independent sort of mom and pop shops.
You know what? Maybe I'll pass that to you guys.
I think that really depends on the product they're after. Mom and pop stores are not going to be out of the loop by any means. If there's a product out there that they're wanting and you're selling it and you're at a mom and pop store, they're going to steal it from you just as much as they will from the retail, the box stores that I'm seeing anyway in Lethbridge, and I'm sure that's going to be seen across the province. They're not concerned about who the loss is coming from. They're looking at more of their gain than they care about where the loss is coming from.
And I can add to that, because what we want to do is send that message to the mom and pop stores to report it, because we base our information on what's reported. Typically, the big chain stores are going to report huge losses. The mom and pop store might say, okay, well, it's a one-off, so they won't report it. But that one-off could be somebody, an offender who's hit 4 other stores in the area. So we want to send that message out that everything needs to be reported, because that we can track that information and try and identify, because we've developed relationships with a lot of the higher-end retailers. We want that relationship with the lower-end retailers too, because we value the information that they share with us, because we use it. Because shoplifting is that stigma that it's a low-level offense. Typically it is when you look at the big scale of how crime works, but it leads to other crimes. And we're finding that these offenders that we're dealing with are involved in higher criminal activity, and shoplifting is just the start.
You were talking about these bigger fish that are making all these requests. What power do you guys have to prosecute these people? Because they're obviously the ones making the requests for all these items for the lower level shoplifters. So how do you go after these bigger fish in this state?
I guess you go ahead, Joe. You can talk.
We would like to see a little bit more time and effort spent on going after the big fish. You know, the information comes in, but it usually is just very vague information. When we conduct investigations, we are looking at as much information as we can get to identify who is the person putting out the request for the items that are being stolen. It's not an easy task, but that's where partnerships with the other Alberta police agencies work well, and work well with the RCMP. In Alberta, we do have a federal enforcement section that looks after the internationally scoped investigations, and they're all within a mandate that is in federal policing. I've gotten involved in this group because I was originally part of federal policing. Specifically, I was a counterfeit currency coordinator, but I've now transitioned into working at the Airdrie detachment, and I'm trying to take a lot of the learnings from this group with the organized retail crime and their online reporting tools to take to the community of Airdrie to get our community more involved from the retailer aspect. Like, one of the key points from today is we want people to be good witnesses. So if you do go to a place and buy some property and you're not happy with it and you're concerned about its legitimacy, give us a call, but give us good information about who you're attempting to buy it off. That will build into an investigation that can then get turned to federal policing or somebody that's involved in a larger scope investigation. The other thing is, if you're in a store and you're seeing an event unfold, be a good witness. That doesn't mean pull out your cell phone. It doesn't mean put yourself at risk. It means do your best to record the identity of the person that committed the offense. You're looking at hair color, anything unusual, tattoos, scars, clothing, people they're with, cars they went to. All that information is relevant to us. And whether or not it's a $20 theft or a $200,000 theft, it's still important, because what we've learned as a group here is that people involved in these organized retail crime sprees and thefts aren't limited to one crime or one type of crime or one product. So we want all the information we can get. So we're asking the community to be proactive.
Are there businesses then that are fronting like as something else and then selling all the stolen goods out of the back of the store or something? Like, does that exist in Calgary?
So everything that we do is information based, and we're of course going to work on whatever intelligence we get. We work really closely with our community partners in the stores. We work closely with each other, and what we're finding is that often our offenders are being arrested with an actual shopping list. Now, that shopping list, typically, we are starting now, I guess to answer the question directly, we're starting now to work backwards. We're starting now to figure out who wrote that shopping list. Why are you targeting this specific item? Why do these, specific items, whether it's sheets that need a certain thread count to fragrances that need to be of a certain brand, down to certain types of meats that you might be stealing from a grocery store, where are they going? And I think one of the great examples of how going down that rabbit hole has started to open up our eyes, Joe alluded to it, Corporal Stubbs alluded to it earlier. The investigation that we worked on together actually was quite interesting. It all started with one loss prevention officer paying attention and noticing that something just wasn't quite right, which then led into a much larger file where, for the first time in my experience, we were able to follow around some offenders and lay some substantive charges that ended up resulting in a larger investigation into actual counterfeit production, which then led into a larger national investigation. So to say where is it going, we're just starting down that rabbit hole. We're just starting to be able to really nail that down. It could be a variety of people. It could be, I know a guy who knows a guy. It could be as far as a store that might be fronting something. The likelihood of a store, a legitimate store, actually fronting stolen property is far less than the guy who's online and says, I have 15 drills brand new in the box here. They're at a quarter of the price. Would you like one? There's that variety. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Could you tell us a little bit about why you guys are pleased to these things on display and what they're
Okay.
Like, what we've got out here. So basically what we have out here are just some examples of booster bags that they have. We have some of the counterfeit currency that's used, and that actually was used in your guys' joint file, I believe. So you can see how realistic that currency is. So if you're not actually paying attention, and a lot of these places aren't, they're just taking the cash and, you know, giving the product back, right? Like you mentioned, I believe, they'll then actually go and return the product at maybe the same location another day, or their partner will return it, and they'll actually get legitimate money for it, right? So now they're putting in counterfeit currency, getting the legit cash back, right? So that's a win for them. Booster bags, you can come take a peek at them after, and basically that is so you can stuff them full and the tags won't get them on your way out, right? So it doesn't alert the security systems that are there. I can't see over the podium here. Okay, so then you can see just a bunch of the other tools. So lots of little clippers that they'll use to actually detach the ink. Yeah, all the, I don't even know the terms to it. And this is, again, kind of like Constable Anderson mentioned, our loss prevention officers are really important to this group. So our loss prevention officers work with our programs that we have all developed and all run on across the province. And they are key to a lot of these investigations, whether it be a little notice of it, or they see the same person coming in and walking out with $400 worth of meat, or the same person just kind of, you know, not looking right? So we rely on them to give us that information. They're our eyes in the stores. We can't be at all these stores watching, especially during, you know, holiday season time. So they are crucial to a lot of these investigations, and they're actually really good. Constable Wilson actually does a program where he teaches them, you know, how to take proper statements and everything like that. I guess you can mention that. But we kind of do the same thing in Lethbridge, where we truly rely on the information coming in from them. And it's very important that they know what to look for and stuff. But we also need to remember that they're not officers, and we can't rely on them to conduct these arrests, especially with the players that are out there now. It's not the same as it was, you know, even 10 years ago before I started. It's not the same game. So we need to remember that they don't have the tools, their training is not the same as ours, and we don't want to put them at risk. So we need them to collect the information just like other witnesses and provide it to us, and then we can roll on our investigations from that. But every little part is crucial. So what the LPO gives us, what the, you know, bystander over here happens to see, we need everything we can get. So like was mentioned, we need to have good witnesses with good information, but be safe about it and be smart about it, because it's just a different ballgame right now. So I don't know if you want to talk about your training.
Yeah. Like she stated, loss prevention officers, they actually assist us tremendously, because right now, I mean, I run a program with EPS called the Cooperative Policing Program, where we actually train loss prevention officers from various stores on how to do things as far as report writing on a standardized EPS report. So that way they can actually submit a report that's acceptable by the Crown. Therefore, our police members don't have to redo the report, because they're trained how to write reports like us. And I also teach them aspects, like was stated, safety. The biggest thing we teach them is being safe. We want them to be good witnesses, because they are still citizens. Their powers of arrest are limited, just like a private citizen. But because they see the prolific offenders on a regular basis, they assist us by sharing that information, and we can utilize their information to hold these offenders accountable, and use that information to lead into higher offenses, where what was talked about is some of these guys who are boosting and moving this stuff to facilitate organized retail crime. So, like I said, the loss prevention officers, our retail partners, are a huge asset, and like I said, we want to make them part of in the community aspect of things. We utilize their expertise just as well as they want us to hold the offenders that come to their stores accountable.
Can I just build on that for a second, Ray?
Yeah.
So, like, we've talked a lot about our partnerships within the police agencies, but we have like strong partnerships with the retail council, with the businesses. But the partnership that's probably most important to us is the public. So, you know, we're talking be safe, be smart, be good witnesses, but you're the eyes and ears for what's going on out in the public. And use that non-emergency line to call your local law enforcement. Use Crime Stoppers, because it's that partnership which will help keep our community safe, and it'll help reduce the amount of crime that happens. So you don't have the training, you know, but we are asking you to use what you do have, which are your eyes and ears, and keep us informed about what's happening in your community so that we can help police it.
I just want to go back to the first question you asked earlier about the people going back and forth. So last week in Lethbridge, we arrested a group of people doing these kind of crimes in Lethbridge. We had arrested 6 or 7, I can't remember exactly the number it was now. And they were known, some of them were known to be from Calgary. So through our other agencies within our service, we're finding that people are coming from Lethbridge to Calgary to commit crimes, going back home, and vice versa to Edmonton and stuff. So again, last week we caught 6 of them. Some are from Calgary, some are from Lethbridge. So it's happening quite a bit, and they're very organized, even though these ones happen to be youths. Even at youths are already organized into this aspect. So it is.
Building on that, the tools that we're seeing, the things to be aware of, the fact that we're seeing offenders using our major highways, going back and forth, going to smaller towns, jurisdictions that the RCMP police all the way up to Edmonton, and we're communicating with each other. That's really the message from law enforcement about how we're working together. Joe highlighted how witnesses and the public can help us. And really, at the end of the day, I think the biggest message is this exists. This is something that people need to be aware of and alerted to. And it does often lead to other crime types. And so, though we're talking about an organized retail crime with a victim-specific organized crime group, and those groups vary, we're seeing them involved in stolen vehicles, drugs, other violent offenses, weapons offenses, counterfeiting currency. Some of the best currency I personally have ever seen counterfeited is on the table. The tools that they're using to defeat the security devices can also be quickly converted to weapons. The idea that an unarmed citizen is going to make a citizen's arrest on somebody that is carrying a weapon, it scares us, and that's not what we want people to do. We want you to call us, give us the tips, make sure that you're aware of your surroundings, and that you take that second to just note what somebody looks like, what they're wearing. Basically minute pieces of information actually lead to bigger investigations. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, was it when someone goes out and buys something like that, some people just don't care, they just want the cheapest deal possible sometimes, right? So can that person be prosecuted for knowingly buying stolen property?
There are occasions where if you know that the property was obtained through the crime in Canada and you take that piece of property, then you're in possession now of stolen property, and that's a charge. That's a crime. So yes, you could be prosecuted. And Ray, do you want to highlight maybe what you talk about with respect to that?
Yeah.
Sure.
So basically, you go on Kijiji, you locate an item, and you think it's a good deal, so you go and purchase it. And just like Constable Anderson said, you possess that, and you knowingly know that that's a stolen property, then yeah, you could be prosecuted for possession of stolen property. What we're finding is that with the online component, people are actually showing up to buy this stuff from people. Your safety is at risk, and that's something we want to stress. That when you go on Kijiji, you locate that buy, you meet that person, you're meeting somebody who is involved in the criminal world. So you have no idea what that person's about, what their motivation is. So your safety is at risk right then and there by meeting that person, whether it be in a grocery store parking lot, in a mall. You never know. All I know is that you're dealing with somebody who's involved in the criminal world, and their motivations might compromise your safety. So that's something we want. We stress that to the public. Just be aware of when you're buying something that looks too good to be true. It probably is, and not only that, your safety could be compromised as well.